Sevens, Jackpot, a one act by Joshua Del Rey, an excerpt from Banned Book, fall of 2022, made possible in part by Illinois Arts Council Agency. One. Lights up. The scene is set in an anonymous motel room with a bed, a table, and 4 chairs. In one of the chairs, facing away from the audience, a lifeless male body in an expensive suit is slumped over the table with a knife in his back. There are 3 women seated around him. The women sit silently at the table, staring at the body for what seems like an eternity, with the drip, drop of blood collecting in a puddle at his feet. Zoe, the actress, black, wears all black leather and black glasses and has her fingers entwined at the top of her head. Abby, the model, wears a black miniskirt and a black jacket, black fishnet stockings, black heels, and a black studded collar. Covers her mouth with her hands. Sonia, the porn star, white, wears a black gown with a necklace of black diamonds. Holds her head up with her 2 hands curled in fists. All 3 women wear wedding bands. And they remain in the silent tableau. Zoe, at once overcome, bursts into loud tears, and after a few moments collects herself. The long silent tableau continues as it was until the women feel compelled to speak. Long silences between lines. The 3 women breathe loudly, inhaling, exhaling, purposefully. We are going to be here for a while. What time is it? The best questions have no answers. I remember being upset. What year was that? I wonder how long it would take his body to decompose into the ether. Zoe looks at her watch, shakes her wrist, puts the watch up to her ear, takes it off, hands it to Sonia, who puts it on the floor and smashes it with her heel. I don't have the patience to discuss time. Time is a prison. I wonder if I wish he were still alive. I think you're thirsty or cold or otherwise wanting, and you want him to bring you something or buy you something that would make you not so thirsty, not so cold, or not so otherwise wanting. That is my definition of empathy. Let us vainly attempt to rationalize the fact that our husband is dead. I just cannot believe it. husband is finally dead. How incredibly shocking. I'm saddened and appalled, dismayed, etc. That is my definition of empathy. What is it about chemical death that refuses to elicit an emotional response from me? I've never been this close to him. I think you were right about the shirt. The pinstripes and the blood clash. It's a fashion nightmare. We should order dinner. Slow fade. Two. Lights out. Zoe and Sonia and Abby sit at the table, but their positions have changed. Zoe covers her mouth with her hands. Abby holds her head up with her fists. Sonia has her fingers entwined at the top of her head. They stare at the body unaltered in a second silent tableau until they are compelled to speak. Is there any weather outside? Zoe looks through the suit coat slung over the chair that holds the body in position. There's an envelope with photographs in it. Zoe slides the large manila envelope across the table. Sonia opens it. Pictures of the three of us. Put them in the nightstand drawer with the Bible so we can forget they ever existed. Sonia rises, envelope in hand, crosses to the nightstand, opens the drawer. There's no Bible in here. Abby bursts into hysterical tears. Give me that goddamn envelope. When you're dead, I guess you're fucking dead. Abby sits. Zoe deals from a deck of playing cards. How do I look? Pause. Sonia finally answers nonchalantly, like you've got the King of Hearts in your hand. Slow fade. 4. Lights up. Zoe and Sonia and Abby sit at the table, but their positions have changed. Abby has her fingers entwined at the top of her head. Zoe holds her head up with her fists. Sonia covers her mouth with her hands. The body remains as it was. A third silent tableau stretches until the women are compelled to speak. How did you imagine he was going to die? Accidentally. Would have been just like him to do himself in without our help. I never imagined it happening on purpose. When I dreamed of it every night, he was always driving a car. He was always headed somewhere at top speed, and then the next moment, the velocity with which his body moved ceased entirely. I remember having these split-second visions, nodding off and seeing his collision in my head. Graphic, hallucinatory, nocturnal emissions of his destroyed body trapped in a mangled vehicle. These reoccurring prophetic movie moments. These non-consensual tragic fantasies. It was never a crime. Sometimes he wouldn't be driving a car at all, but sort of gliding down in the air with his feet above the highway. Every time the dream ended with him getting hit, he got hit every time. In my dreams, he never died the same way twice. Sure, he died in car accidents. He died in head-on collisions. He died in 5 car infernos of metal, plastic, and burning rubber. He died locked in his car on fire while parked, trapped inside like a wild animal. He died from carbon monoxide poisoning, asleep, the car running in the garage. He died his car crushed by a wrecking press, him still in it, sometimes already dead or unconscious, sometimes completely aware. I remember having a month of car death dreams, a different iteration every night. He died in countless plane crashes. He died as airplanes struck by lightning. He died struck by lightning in the middle of a city street. He died getting into an argument at a convenience store over $1 and being beaten to death with a cash register. He died beaten to death in front of his house, in front of a restaurant, at a public library, on the street minding his own business. He died set on fire, hung, quartered, tortured, suffocated by a plastic bag, electrocuted in the bathtub, drowning, choking, hanging, eaten, ripped apart, gassed, decapitated. I imagine him dying by tripping, falling down the stairs, his heart exploding. I imagined him dying in bed of old age. I imagined him crucified. Every night, just before I awoke, I was sure. I remember being absolutely sure. And then, every morning, when he was there, alive, sleeping next to me, I always looked at him puzzled, unconvinced. Once, I imagined he vanished in the bed with me. I woke up and he was gone. But it just so happened that he went to the bathroom and came right back. Slow fade. Five. Lights up. Zoe and Sonia and Abby sit on the floor, against the bed, playing cards. The drip, drop of blood from the body onto the floor beneath him resonates loudly. And the women are silent until compelled to speak. I wish. Wishing implies hope. What is the point then? Playing cards. Playing cards imply destiny. I wish for good cards. The absence of free will. I want to win. Impossible. This is hell. That is certain. When will Soon, I suppose. Slow fade. 6. Lights up. This room has 0 fucking air. I can't breathe. I'm getting fucking asphyxiated in here. I'm seriously going out of my fucking mind without oxygen. I need some air. I need to stretch my legs. I need to take a walk in a crowd of people. I need to hear 1,000 people talking at once. I hear 1,000 people, but they're not talking. They're screaming insanity, calling for my head, demanding my blood. There are 1,000 hopeless murderers that exist in my mind only, all vying for the last deathstroke. Banner in hand, the Jews of Christendom have come to set me free. They don't know that I'm not the Messiah, nor do I pretend to be. I only suck cock on videotape for money. I need to give these people a reason to go home. Can I beat a dead horse into the ground? These maniacs are storming the walls of my brain, demanding entrance into the hallowed ground of my conscience just to defile my sacred thoughts. Read my emails, string me up, and light me on fire. The sound of words, talk, we say things, and I think your voice sounds like a dissonant melody. It sounds like music when you speak sometimes. A lot of the time. When you speak certain words, they sound like notes. 1, 4, 5. Chord progressions of hit records. Those words, those certain words, every time you say them, they hit the same note. That note seems necessary to the whole of the piece. Somehow, the piece would be incomplete without it. Sometimes you build these sentences with all these words that I recognize, and the words seem more beautiful when they are put together. The notes seem more like complete arrangements of music, the letters grouped together to form words, grouped together to form sentences, but I never recognize the tune. Nonsense. Babies are bred on nonsense, so we have an ear accustomed to the sound of nonsense. In fact, I'd always rather hear a person's voice than the things they have to say. Keep talking, it distracts me. I don't want to have to think. I like to feel completely separated from the sound, almost like hearing the echo of something I know I said manipulated in the play. So it sounds like words I never spoke in my lifetime. Nonsense. Sometimes nonsense is the closest one can get to the truth. Slow fade. Seven. Lights up. Everything is as it was. Ever sit and just think for a while? I don't know. I don't think so. Wish I had the time to think. I wish I didn't have to think about time. Sit and think, sit down and think up, sit up and think sideways. Sometimes I like to sit and think, but I always end up thinking about how I am sitting and thinking. Thinking about myself sitting. Thinking about myself thinking. Sitting about myself thinking. Thinking about nothing except for the fact that I am sitting down to think. It gets confusing. Nothing, I think, lasts more than 8 seconds. I might have thought of the most brilliant thing in the world, but if 8 seconds have passed, It's gone. Is that what you've been thinking about? There's more. Let me think. When mankind is wiped off the face of the earth, the only thing that will remain for eternity will be the spirit of what money has created. How about that? Money is happiness. Now, if there was enough money to go around, there wouldn't be any inequity. And the structure of all civilization thrives on social and economic inequity. Without inequity, everything we know in the world would crumble. It would be chaos. It would be anarchy. Not only does one man feel the inherent need to be ruled, but the same man feels the need to hold legitimate power over someone else. The simultaneous lust and submission to power, perpetuated by money, cements inequity into our culture permanently. Money, power, inequity. All necessary evils to keep civilization from falling apart. What to eat, what to wear, what to do, how to look. Careless and serene. Being dead must be an easier way to live. I want shoes. I want leather, hand-stitched handbags. I want extravagant clothes, gloves, hats, dresses, bras, panties. I want expensive toothpaste. I want organic mouthwash. I want flatware that has been handmade in the south of Spain, imported and marked up 700%. I want a Tibetan tea set handcrafted by the Dalai Lama himself, and I want it delivered to me on the back of an elephant. I want to put a price on everything. I want the ordinary to be extraordinary, and the extraordinary to be on the clearance rack. I want to buy with money what money cannot buy. I want to own equity in the soul of mankind. My life was buried under insignificance. I now have purpose. Complications. Brands. The man's name on my underwear. I could read about the new luxury designer crucifixes in the October Vanity Fair. You know, the ones only the rich can afford. One can dream. Ah, if only salvation could be bought. Yeah, in a perfect world. Slow fade. Eight. Lights up. Sonia, Zoe sit at the table, silent. Silent until compelled to speak. Abby lies unconscious on the bed. Now here everything falls apart. Let me tell you a story about the first living thing in space during the Cold War. The effort to control the universe, the ageless, endless battle between good and evil, materialized once again in the early 1960s, seemingly a technological pissing contest between America and Russia. But the subtext was a fundamental instinct to conquer extinction. Nukes pointed at every major city around the globe. Death oppressed the best and the worst minds of the world. The end of all life was being planned. And so, life after death needed to be ensured. The space race was to be the last religious conquest of mankind. Who would colonize heaven? Would it be the USA? Would it be Russia? The Russians made the first move before interdimensional travel was tested on human beings. The Russians sent up into space a dog in a rocket. Now, how did Laika the dog die? Starvation? Asphyxiation? Exposure? Radiation? Insanity? Could have been any of a multitude of things. And that dead dog in an abandoned tin can orbited the Earth for more than a year. And for that year, our Earth wore a pendant around its neck to constantly remind itself of an inevitable future. No one pays any attention to people. They want images, stories, metaphors, some alternate reality that describes reality better than reality itself. Energy is a force that cannot be extinguished, an action that must create an equal reaction, eventually compelled to change form but not substance. Life is pure energy, and death is not an equal reaction. This energy must go somewhere. We all thought it would be space. Man's faith in his own intelligence is his fatal flaw. Life must be eternal. It just seems to end. That's the grand mystery. What is behind the locked door? Believing in what you know to be true is the first mistake. If one chooses to live their life in fear of the unknown, one will never live their life. If you fear what you don't understand, you will never understand anything. Man's ability to fear their beliefs can be corrupted is impossible to differentiate from mankind's willingness to corrupt their beliefs. Death is just perspective. We ride toward the horizon, but the horizon never gets any closer. To meet an old friend. Have I ceased to exist? I put out a candle with my fingertips. Abby slowly wakes. Zoe and Sonia look over to her. I've played God on television. How do we reconcile fact from fiction? By knowing only the one true God. And he's in this room. And he's got a knife in his back. Blackout. 9. Lights up. Video is shot on 4 projection screens in the house, and 3 shots remain for the entirety of the scene on a close-up of, respectively, Zoe, Sonia, or Abby, without exchanging or complicating the shot. The 4th image projected is the body, facing away, knife handle jutting out of his back, motionless as always. The myth of the murdered god. History will be made whether you like it or not. A few moments of static overcome the 3 screens that portray the women. Only the image of the body remains projected. The women are still as statues, waiting. Then back on air. They resume. The first sentient human beings of history, now capable of imagining something bigger than themselves, worshipped the fiery orb in the sky, sun, bore witness to the death of God every 24 hours, as night and darkness descended upon the world. The very first God, the celestial sun above, died at dusk every evening, and in the morning arose, resurrected, to illuminate the world. Prometheus, the first savior of Greek mythology, stole fire from Olympus and gave it to mankind as a gift. Prometheus lit the minds of the ancient Greeks, giving them the ability to think and think critically, examine, understand themselves, and counter the darkness of the world with light. As a punishment for stealing this element that rightly belonged only to the gods and giving it to mankind. As punishment for enlightening mankind. Zeus condemned Prometheus to suffer for humanity, crucified him on top of Mount Caucasus, a vulture forever circling his deific body, pecking at his liver, torturing him for all time. The ancient Persian messiah Mithra, whose followers eventually became Zoroastrians, followers of Zarathustra, an Arabian sorcerer poet, died for mankind. Coincidentally, if coincidence comforts you, the ancient god Mithra was born on December 25th. He was resurrected from the dead on Easter. When his followers witnessed his return, they exclaimed, "Rejoice, O sacred initiated, your God has risen. His death, his pains, his sufferings have worked your salvation." The father of Pythagoras, by oracle, was informed that he would have a son who would be the benefactor of mankind, being warned at the same time to have no physical interaction with his wife, who would be impregnated by a Holy Ghost. Pythagoras, a Greek master rabbi, taught his disciples for 100 years, but as efforts to advance mankind are often met with enmity, fear, and violence, Pythagoras met a tragic end. He might have been murdered by a violent mob. Some say he fled the mob bent on the destruction of his university and was burned alive in an inn with a few of his students that had helped him escape. Some say he just died of a broken heart, never having fulfilled his destiny to illuminate the human race. Others say he was crucified. The East Indian Christ, or Krishna, yet another divine savior of humanity, was crucified by his enemies upon a tree. One day, foreseeing his own death and at peace with his end, he went to make ablutions in the sacred river Ganges. plunged himself in 3 times, knelt and prayed. And in this position, he was murdered with arrows by the people whose ignorance he had exposed. Hung on the branches of a cross-shaped tree and left to vultures. When his followers got word that their rabbi had been murdered, they went to the site of the crime, the tree, and discovered it was covered with fragrant red flowers. Ancient Hindu art from the period, influenced by Krishna's death, depict him hanging from the tree with wounds in his hands and heels. Quetzalcoatl, the black Central American god of the winds, for the illumination and salvation of the Mayas, emerged from the sea holding in his hand a strange cross and wearing a robe embroidered with red crosses. Quetzalcoatl died by crucifixion, and coincidentally, if coincidence comforts you, died on the cross in between 2 criminals. When Cortez came to conquer Mexico, centuries after these stories were embedded in the consciousnesses of the Mayas, he arrived overseas and he bore the Christian cross. The Mayas recognized the symbol immediately and understood that Quetzalcoatl had been resurrected from the dead and had returned to them as he promised he would. Hiram Abiff, the legendary master mason charged with designing and building the Temple of Solomon in Israel, the Grand Master of the Lodge of Jerusalem, was a widow's son. During construction of the temple, he divided his builders into 3 degrees, judged by the quality of their excellence. 3 men of low degree, covetous of the more exalted positions, found Hiram Abiff in the sanctuary one day while praying and demanded the master's word, which would elevate them. Hiram refused. He was murdered by the 3 apprentices for his secrets, which he took to the grave. Hiram is man illuminated, and his 3 murderers signify the state, the church, and the mob. Well, looking at it this way, 3 things can cause the spirit of mankind to cease to exist: ignorance, superstition, and fear. This murder master is a cosmic martyr to the Freemasons, and his story is based on the Egyptian rites of Osiris, whose death and resurrection signifies the death of man on the physical plane at the gates of matter, and his resurrection and regeneration through the elements of creation onto the spiritual plane of existence. Through death, man enters the mind of God, who, throughout history, waits for man to return to the origin and beckons him inside, returns for him. Sons. The knife was an experiment. We wanted to challenge death as a universal truth and see if we could crawl back from the precipice. We failed. He won't be returning this time. Long blackout. Ten. Lights up. Zoe, Abby, and Sonia sit at the table, motionless in dim candlelight. The only sound in the house is the drip drop of blood collecting in a puddle at the feet of the body, who remains in original and unmoved position. The walls of the motel room have now been covered with black and white photographs, headshots, a multitude of different faces, reminding the audience of a photographer taking pictures in the house before the first curtain. On the table, a Nikon camera. Otherwise, the set is as it was at opening. In the early days of photography, people refused to have their pictures taken. They didn't trust cameras. They thought the technology would trap their souls in the photograph. Their souls would never be released into the afterlife. A still photograph would hold your soul in purgatory for all time, in prison, without the possibility of ever escaping. I don't know what to believe. Nothing seems real to me. And Sonia finally loses it and breaks down in tears. God is dead. It will be in the newspapers tomorrow. Zoe picks up the camera set on the table in between the three women. She turns it on. She points the lens at the body and takes a picture. And then she opens the back of the camera, unravels the film onto the table, exposing the roll. The crime is complete. Now we need witnesses. Accomplices. Sonia stands, crosses to the door, attempts to open it. It is locked. He will never speak a word to me again. Not after this. Slow, fade, end. I saw red when I opened up the door. I saw red. My heart just spilled onto the floor. Oh, and I didn't mean to see his face. But I saw yours. I saw red and then I closed the door. I don't think I'm gonna love you anymore.